Hi, welcome to the Lone Star Dowsers. This is our January 2022 meeting, and I am thrilled to have Brenda Wilson here. Brenda is an astrologer all the way from Montana, and she is going to talk about some predictions or some astrological things to be aware of in 2022. And she's got a lot of great information. And then at the end of our call, you can post some questions in the chat and she'll answer your questions. So let me give you a little bit of information about Brenda. Now, her interest in astrology really came later in life. She didn't have her first natal reading until she was in her 40s. And it was life-changing for her. And it really inspired her to take several courses and to study with Sharon Mooney, who was a really incredible influence for her. And something that's different about Brenda is she's lived most of her life in rural Montana. And if you were on earlier, you could hear her say that's where she is now and that it's 26 degrees and there's more snow expected. Now, her life has revolved around agriculture, which has led her to become a commodities broker. And she does the technical analysis of markets, which also means looking at the charts. And so she believes that there's a lot of similarities between astrology charts and the charts of the market, which is very interesting to me. And she also finds that when you're aware of the planet's energies, that it's really a great help in all aspects of life. And it gives her a greater understanding of the people around her. So Brenda does private sessions. Her email is in the chat. And you can contact her if you're interested in having a session. So welcome, Brenda.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And first of all, it's always asked to be asked to me to speak is always such an honor. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, your group here. And secondly, I really believe that this is such incredibly powerful, important time for the human that I am very grateful for this opportunity to share this information with you. The human has always looked to the sky. Sailors look to the sky to guide them, and all around the world and all cultures have looked to the heavens to pray to God or the Great Spirit. So it's really interesting to me is that all around the world, and supposedly before people traveled to other continents, they looked up at the sky and they saw the same thing. And even though I've studied the constellations and know them, I still have a hard time making out that could be a man, or that could be a woman, or that could be a four-legged creature, let alone. But when we talk about these different continents and these people, they all were seeing similar, the same thing. You know, it might have been a buffalo to the Native Americans, and it was a bull. And halfway around the world. So not only were they seeing the same things, but they also had similar mythological stories about those sets of stars up there. And for me, I wonder, were they actually tuning in to those energies and what those energies were that were coming to Earth? Or did they have some kind of help from somewhere? But the interesting thing is each constellation and each set of stars sends out its own frequency and vibration and energy. And it's even different as we go across the constellation and align with each star, and the energy continues to shift. And of course, it's different if you're looking at a right shoulder or a left foot. But all through time, people have been tapping into these energies. And astrology is the second oldest science on Earth, with math being the first. So with that, I want to review a little bit about what we were looking at, the energies of 2020 and 2021, and look at what the planets have in store for 2022 and what those energies are, both for you personally and for our country. And bottom line, this year, 2022 is a really big one because we are right on the cusp of deciding which way we're going to go. It was fun. New Year of 2020, I had a dear friend who sent me something from another astrologer, and she was quite upset about it. And I honestly said to her, "Why are you reading this?" I could not read it. It was so negative, so down, so horrible about what the year 2020 was about. In 2020, we had Saturn and Pluto conjunct. Saturn limitation and Pluto transformation. And for sure, 2020, we were restricted, and for sure, we saw some transformation. The limitation forced to change, that slow evolutionary process. And it was all so we would build new foundations for going into the future. And difficulties that we had from being restricted, lockdown, but it also brought out a lot of perseverance, a lot of self-reliance, a lot of resourcefulness. And we figured out that we needed to have some patience and determination and ready to adapt to new realities. And it was interesting with me watching grandkids that were always on their phones and on their gadgets, and they got tired of it. They wanted to get back and be with their friends and be back to school and actually see their friends. So that 2020, the whole conjunction of Pluto and Saturn, that really pointed out what had outlived its purposefulness and what needed to be transformed. And we saw this from government all the way down into our communities and into our personal lives.
Oh, and education. I mean, everywhere I think the system was broken, or had a lot of issues. We maybe were kind of limping along because we're used to it. Yeah, we can't ignore anymore.
For sure. And in a lot of ways, it was tough, for sure, but it really did do its job. And it, once again, that, in fact, that one is, I tossed away that, deleted what that should send me that other astrologer, but I thought about the time the COVID outbreak, that astrologer was probably patting herself on the back. And there was a lot of talk about, in the beginning of 2020 with astrology, that having Saturn and Pluto conjunct, that we were going to go through something. We just didn't know what it would look like. And then with 2021, we had Saturn and Uranus were square. And so the 90-degree, the square, that's the most friction we can have between two astral bodies. It's tough. It's for a lesson. There's a lot of friction and irritation, and it's going to be brought to attention and be addressed. So because of that one's just starting to wane and starting to leave us now. But we had that all of last year, and it was exact at the 90 degrees, or because we had the retrograde. So with having Saturn and Uranus, Saturn is limitation and restriction, and Uranus is change. It was first seen at the time of the American and French Revolution. So change, revolution, it's all the RE words of reform, rejuvenate, recreate. So we faced these restrictions everywhere we turned last year. There was a lot of frustration because we literally were forced to do everything differently. And we couldn't just plan and know that we could go ahead and do that. We were always having to do our prep work and do our preparation for it, but we had to wait for the door to open. We couldn't force things ahead of their time, or we just hit a brick wall. There was a lot of change, a lot of discord, a lot of things completely crumbled. And worldwide, we saw change from governments and healthcare, the mandates, the restrictions. We saw it in our police force, the gender and racial indifferences, food supplies, global trade, monetary systems, all undergoing changes, and really with no direction or plan as to where it was all headed. It was just coming down. And there was no way to avoid that shifting and changing on all levels, because from government on down to families and personal lives, there was all changes in really unprecedented ways. So I laughed. I said, with me, I was always having to take a left turn or a detour constantly. plans rearrange. And for certain, there's no more normal anywhere. And we're also not going to go back. It's like you can't put all that back in the box. And then we have this year, and we are sitting on a very, very important cusp for moving forward. What we do in our lives has a huge impact on the whole. And I'll explain more when I talk about Pluto and Neptune, the two planets out on the edge of our solar system, and why I say that. And what changes, we really need to stop and contemplate what changes we want to make in our own lives. Because this year is so different from so many others, and that it's really given us the opportunity to make those changes. So I'm asking each of you, you may want to contemplate where you are right now in your life, and really define what your goals are and what you have and what changes you want to make and what changes you may need to make. This is really a very crucial time frame. And so we all need to define our own direction. And the first thing is to be authentic to ourselves. I'd like to say to each of you, know your value and know who you are and who you came here to be, and analyze what you truly love and value with authenticity, because it's really the perfect time for us to reimagine our world, to create something new. This really is a birthing time. We're still on the early stages of the age of Aquarius, trying to decide which way the human will go. And
when you say that, what do you mean, which way the human will go?
Well, for one thing, are we going to remain human? I'm going to be very blunt. Are we going to remain human, or are we going to take on technology to the point that we are artificial intelligence? We've got some
good question to ask. Yeah.
Big decisions to make. And once again, the age of Pisces was supposed to have been more spiritual. The human was supposed to have been on a spiritual path, but we got off track and off course with all the kingdoms that we had around the world during the Piscean age. And it became very patriarchal, and we got off course. We have a chance, and like we're just in these early stages of age of Aquarius, and let alone what I'm saying about the lineup that we have right this year is really a pivot point. It's big. We don't, and I say the planets always have their timing. They know their timing. And then it's free will for us, what we step up and what we do with it. So that's why it's so important what each of us does individually. And what you think is what you create. So in 2022, the USA chart and why it's a very pivotal year for the US, because of how and what the US does will influence our world. And 2022, the US has so many things happening. The main thing is the Pluto return, which I'll talk about. But
okay, I'm going to pause 1 second, just because. So why I know the US has been a really influential character and the cast of characters in the world, but why is there so much importance this year on what we do as a nation that affects the world?
Well,
in your opinion.
And it is because of this Pluto, not only the Pluto return, which is huge, but because of both Uranus and Neptune and the solar return chart of the US. The combination, the lineup is, it's pivotal. And the US was intended to be more spiritual. It was intended to bring together other nations, and Pluto with it coming back to the same degree that it was when the declaration was designed, Pluto represents power, Pluto's transformation. So saying that this is really how this country will evolve. There's going to be, once again, it's kind of like having Pluto and Saturn. There's going to be something happen. What it will be is yet to be determined, and why it's such a pivotal point. And before I get too deep in that, I want to talk back up a little bit, and talk a little bit more about how astrology works, about these energies of the planets coming into us. Because the energies affect Earth and everyone on the planet. And sometimes the planets are just out there. They're not interacting with each other. They're not within an aspect of a vibration of each other, that they are just having their own communications. They're not talking to each other. And when they start to come into an orb of an aspect, then we start to feel that vibration here on Earth. And it might be that I'll use Saturn and Mercury, that one time they're in a sextile. Well, boy, last time we had just that 60 degrees. We had a great conversation. We had fun coffee, fun conversation, great. Oh, here comes Mercury again. Yeah, they're coming, but now it's a square. Now it's like, hey, buddy, it's time we have a talk. And it's going to be a serious one. So what that degree or what those aspects are depends on what kind of conversation, what kind of vibration those two planets have. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. So the thing is, we have free will to decide how we're going to react to those energies. And all through our own lives, the planets will give us the nudge, but it's still up to us whether we step up. And when planets start to come into orb of each other, we feel it. I see it in the news. And for those of you interested, you can email me. I send out a weekly, I call it constellation considerations of what those energies are. And I keep it personal. But I always...
For those of you that joined us a little bit late, Brenda's email is in the chat. And you can sign up for her email list or sessions or anything you'd like.
So it is interesting to observe that the reason why this all works is because of the vibration and how those hit Earth. And it goes back to Fibonacci, the golden ratio, pi, that we all learned back in math in school, that 1.618, that infinite number. But it's from our cellular structure on up to everything in the universe. It all comes back to Fibonacci, the golden ratio, the golden rule. Fibonacci, you'll have fun if you want to Google that and take a look. It's Fibonacci. There's the only double letter is the two C's. It was actually named after an Italian monk, but everything in nature, and everything from the pyramids to all of our old ruins. An engineer studies it. If there's a bridge or an arch that's going to support, it has to be Fibonacci or it doesn't hold up. Our body, find my finger, they would say that woman was 5'8" tall. Our face is all a pineapple, a head of grain. Music is all Fibonacci, and our solar system is. And it's why you can take a photograph of a nebula and a photograph of a nerve cell, and they look exactly the same formation. It's the same formate from the micro to the macro. So fascinating to me. And I say to me, it's proof that everything was created by God. And it's why when we have the planets come into an aspect of each other, why we start to feel and see that energy and why it affects us here on Earth. So just quickly, the Fibonacci series, you have 1 and 1, you have 2. When you have the sum, you add the previous 2 and 1, 3, 2 and 3, 5, 3 and 5, 8. So once if you divide back, if you want to know the previous number, you divide by 0.618. If you want to know the next number, you multiply times 1.618. So those are the prime numbers, but it works with any number in any series. So back to a chart is created. It's a photograph of basically of where everything is in the sky at that moment. So you can create a chart from everything, not just the birth of a baby, but of a marriage or a business partnership, purchase of a home, or a country, nation, signing of the Declaration. And each chart is individual for that moment in time, for that place on Earth. Because even though Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, if it had been farther north, there would have been a shift to things, east or west, we would have had to go. It changes the chart. So each chart is individual for that moment in time, for that place on Earth. And there are some things that each of us experience because of our natal chart, because of the orbits of the planets. So such as for everyone, you all had, Saturn came back to the degree and minute you were born, sometime around 28, 29 years. And when Saturn comes back around, this is when we face the structure of our life. Where are we headed? Are we kind of face that we're really grown up now? And then another thing that happens, Uranus, because its orbit is about 84 years, so its opposition to moment we were born comes about the age of 42, and Neptune square to our natal is also in this time frame of about 40 to 42. We call that the midlife crisis. Here, and I laugh because here it is again. We look at so many people rather than look at their life and redirect it to be more aligned with their soul. We know all kinds of where the guy got the divorce and went out and bought the sports car, but and that really was avoiding taking a look at what the planets were trying to say. Another one that's interesting is the asteroid Chiron. That return is about age 50. And all along with Chiron, each time it is 90 degrees, its opposition and its return. Those are very pivotal turning points in our life. They're spiritual pivoting points in our life with Chiron. So we have free will to decide how we're going to react to these. And I'm going to say sometimes it can come from totally outside of ourselves, something entirely out of our control. My first husband was killed in a car wreck, and it happened to be when I went back and looked, I had a planetary aspect right there.
So was that your Chiron or a Saturn return?
That was Saturn. It was Saturn, yeah. So I'm going to say that because I've, came rather late into astrology in my life, but I've gone back and looked at my turning points in my life. And there was a major aspect to my natal chart at every one of those. So saying all of this to get back to in any nation's history and those charts, because we can look back in the history and see the planetary aspects, major changes happening. And this one for the USA and the Pluto return, to the exact degree in Capricorn when the declaration was signed. And since Pluto's orbit takes about 248 years, and of course, out there in the astrology world, they're arguing about exactly when this return is, and there's different ways of delineating and looking at the natal chart. And I figure, well, we're in this time frame, no point in getting into the.
Yeah, sometimes things happen a little before and a little after. So
After.
we're definitely in the window.
We're definitely in the window. And I'm going to say too, with being government, there's probably a lot of things that are going to happen behind closed doors that we won't really know what was started and what the outcome was until later. But we're definitely in this. And when we could look back at Pluto's history to its return in other countries, we see major shifts in a nation's power and their influence. We can see where some move from monarchy to other forms of government. But the big example that is so blatant is Rome, the Roman Empire, because the first Pluto return, they went in there and just murdered everyone. And it was just, those people took over. So it was just different faces and different names. It was just as corrupt. But on the second Pluto return is when the Roman Empire fell. So huge changes both times. And the USA's natal chart, July 4th, 1776, with Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we at least know it's during this time frame. And we know that one thing for certain, when the exacts are, Pluto this coming year, we know what has actually transpired is going to be on down the road. But the other thing is the US natal chart, Pluto's in that second house for money and self-worth, what is valued. So because that's its placement in the natal chart, there can be a real shift in the US in how its position or its financial dominance in the world markets. At the very least, we're going to see a shift in America's identity in the world. And had a question about cryptocurrency. And for sure, we are going to see a change in the dollar. And then I was also thinking back, my grandfather, he would put his hand in his pocket. He missed the weight of silver dollars in his pocket. And he'd say, well, this paper isn't worth anything. It used to be, we had real silver and we had real gold. Now that had some value, that was worth something. So we've gone from that to, the paper bills to the debit and the credit cards. And, but I think back, people resisted, giving up their gold and their silver coins. So naturally there's resistance and change, but it's going to come anyway at some point. And sometimes I want to say we create our own problems with our resistance to the change. And then looking at Pluto, it's out there on the edge of our solar system. And it's very small, but it's very, very dense. And we know how powerful Pluto is when it comes around in the chart. Pluto represents power. It represents subconsciousness. It represents transformation. And Pluto is how we evolve. And I loved it because when they were trying to take Pluto away as a planet, astrologers said, no way. We know when that planet comes around, we're not giving up Pluto. We know how powerful it is. They were trying to take away Pluto. They were also trying to take away the right for the human to transform. And astrology stood up and said, we're keeping Pluto. Pluto is Lord of the underworld. And in order to transform, we first need to look at our dark side, expose it, take a look at it. And then with awareness, we can begin to transform. And if any of you are at all interested in reading astrology, I highly recommend Stephen Forrest, an astrologer and author, and his book, Inner Sky, is just a beautiful, perfect beginning one to delve in. And he's a great writer. So one of the things when he was talking about Pluto is he talked about this couple that were taken off sailing and they'd worked hard. They're going to have some days vacation away from work, and they were charting to make sure that they avoided getting, because there's some islands and coral reefs that they wanted to avoid. And sailing away, and the wife said, "Dear, would you like a beer?" "Well, sure, I'd like to have a beer." And they had dinner, and they checked over their charting and everything before they went to bed. And wee hours of the morning, their sailboat hit one of those coral reefs. Well, a half-empty beer can was on the dash, and that was enough to pull that compass off.
Wow.
And take them into that coral reef. So that forgotten half-empty beer can, they were okay, but had to be towed back. That was the end of vacation, repair the sailboat. And throughout then him talking about Pluto, he kept talking about that forgotten half-empty beer can on the dash. In order to transform and evolve, we have to take a good hard look at what we have subconsciously forgotten about or not aware of, or what we want to ignore or try to forget. And so I ask, in what ways will America's position in the world change with its Pluto return? In what will it choose? Will it start to become more what it was supposed to be and supposed to be out in this world? Because Pluto is going to expose, and we know our government and the US, whether not only here, but around the world, has got a lot of half-empty beer cans out there. So the Pluto return actually, it started here December 19th, and it goes clear into March of 2023. And we have, because of retrograde, we have a couple times where it's exact. It's exact on February 20th. It's exact on July 11th. And it's exact again on December 28th of 2022. So those three exacts this year. Because of retrograde, we get it 3 times.
And that's when Pluto's direct?
That's when Pluto's right on the degree in the minute when the declaration was signed.
Oh.
We're in this, it's close enough to be in the return. And that, once again, I'm going to say I've listened to enough astrologers argue at this point, but from the end of December, December 19th of 2021 and into early March of 2023. But then we have these times where it is exact. So the whole.
So what does it mean when it's exact?
Okay, the orb, what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it waxes and it wanes, but it never gets very far from that degree. And it comes because of retrograde, it's going to go back again and then forward again. So exact degree and minute, but I'm saying this whole time frame we're in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So does that mean that maybe the February, July, and December, there's like more of an intensity? Like if something were to, play out big time in the US or world stage, it would likely be around those dates.
Yes. And whether or not it might be behind closed doors, we might not know about it, but yes. And it'll be interesting to watch the news those dates.
Well,
So
if you could trust the news better, right?
Oh, for sure. You got a good point. Yes. What was I thinking? Yeah, I don't. I glance through at the headlines and keep right on going because that's been horrible. Get on my soapbox there on that one, but I'll explain retrograde quick because that's often so confusing. And the cool thing is it's really a good help. We have a lot less retrograde in 2022. And the way I like to explain retrograde is like when you go to pass a car on the highway, because that moment you pull right alongside, it appears like nobody's moving at all, that the car is stopped. That's actually the same as when a planet is in station before it turns direction. And then the minute you pass the other car, it appears that it's going backwards. And that's what retrograde is. And so to me, almost all the retrograde really gets a bad rap in astrology. But the reality is all retrogrades are a time of repeat or a time of do-overs. And the real key is to quit doing it the same way, because I think, aren't we funny as humans? That didn't work. Oh, but I'll just go try it again one more time.
It'll work this time.
This time it might work. But actually, the repeats, we don't want to just repeat it. We want to go for that upgrade. And I have it here on my desk that from my spiritual teacher, Sharon O'Hara, that the gift of grace. So each time you have an opportunity for a redo, it is a gift of grace. Grace opens your awareness so that you realize you are moving forward. It directs you to utilize the opportunity as a springboard in order to accept your self-worth, proper self-love, self-esteem, and your inner higher knowledge. The job of grace is to help you to evolve mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. The extra gift of grace is that it takes you out of the state of your fears. So that's what I remind myself for retrograde.
Wow, that was really powerful. Okay, I'm going to request if you will send that, if you'll send that quote to me, when we send the replay out, I'll send it to everybody, because that was a really beautiful reminder of grace.
Yes, I'll be happy to. And she gave me permission to quote her, so I'm happy to. Most definitely. It's like I said, that's why it stays right there. Anyway, so this Pluto return, it really is an urge for renewal. It's for regeneration. And things hidden in what's below the surface, what's behind the scenes, things are going to surface and going to be brought into awareness, because with Pluto, what was subconscious comes into conscious. And once again, those half-empty beer cans, we know the US has plenty of those. And in this country, we really need to confront what we have tried to conceal. And whenever we look at the dark side and admit what is there, that's when we can start the healing. That's when it's transformational. And I say that's what psychologists do. They find what's hidden in the subconscious, what happened in early childhood, what started the pattern. And by just bringing it into awareness, into consciousness, then it starts the healing, then it starts the transformation. And then we can evolve to a higher level.
I think that's time. I think it's necessary. I think there's been so much deception that has gone on for so very long. It's obviously way out of control. So
exactly. And that's why I think this is such a I'm so excited really about, there's no denying the planet's energies, and it's going to happen. It
might not be comfortable, but
exactly. And we've already seen that, none of us want to go back through and live through, 2020, but a lot of the changes were really good, and it got us to here, and there's some realizations. So
wasn't it Winston Churchill that said, if you're marching through hell, keep marching? It's I think we have to remember, we got to keep marching,
Put one foot in front of the other. Yeah, exactly. And more about Pluto, because Pluto is really, it's about death. It represents death, because in order for there to be rebirth, we have to have a death of something. We have to let go of something. And we have to make room for the new to come in. Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio. So when I talk about Scorpio, I explain it this way. It's the stages that a young girl goes through her life, because it really is the death of a girl's childhood when she starts her menses. And then it's the death of her virginity as she becomes a young woman. And each phase is a total having to let go and a death to take on the next phase. And another way to explain this is also the Icarus story. Icarus he wasn't that he was being so bad. He had to soar and fly with those wings. The thing is we don't need to take ourselves out. We can soar and then dip down and unload some of what we're carrying so we can rise again and soar to a new and higher level. And it's the only time change is difficult is when we cling to something. And humans naturally cling to old established ways. They cling to what is known. My mother was horribly ill and was faced with being able to heal and get back on her feet. And she chose not to. It was too much to change her life. And it was a hard thing to watch and accept, but she couldn't face that kind of change with healing her life and healing her health. So we fear the unknown and we resist the new. And
I think we're seeing that play out so
Yes.
clearly right now.
Yes, we are. And you know, if we've learned anything these last 2 years, it's that things are going to change. We can't cling to those old ways. We have to change. We have to. And this Pluto return is going to force the inevitable on the USA. It's necessary for its growth. And it means facing the dark. And it means facing some things we'd rather not admit to. But we are definitely going to see a lot of exposure here. Whether, how and whichever ways it comes will be interesting to observe, because America simply cannot run away or evade this one. Pluto will bring it out into the light so it can be seen. And so then I look at this is with Pluto and just how it works in our own lives, because it does represent the subconsciousness and transformation. And in our own charts, Pluto is where our power lies. Pluto is the Lord of the underworld. And we have to take a trip to there. We have to look at it before it can and expose it. And we are, like you're saying, we are seeing it. It's simply part of the process. So I think when we're aware that it's part of the process, that is what we're seeing. And just like things are no longer just swept under the rug, they're being exposed.
They are. Let me ask you something. So, well, I mean, obviously we're seeing this play out on the world stage and on the national stage, but what about personally? So if where Pluto is in a particular person's chart, is that kind of where they might see the most change over this next year and a half?
For sure. And I'm going to, because it's twofold. One is looking at where it is in the birth chart, what your lifelong lesson with Pluto is, because it really, and this nails right too. I was, so if you sign up for my constellation considerations, at some point, I intend to do a class on Pluto. Because Pluto, where it is in our natal chart, tells us so much about how we can use our power, how we can step into our power, and where we transform and really evolve. It's really huge in our chart. And then when we run our solar return chart, which talks about and really gives the lessons that we are trying to learn in that year, and what our gifts are and what we're trying to develop in that year, and what our challenges are. So we get years that are easier, and we get years where Pluto really comes along and gives us a nudge. And once again, we have that it is our free will and our choice, whether we ignore it or we step up or we embrace that lesson and learn it. Does that answer?
Right, or you either have to transform or literally you die. I guess if you really simplified it.
Exactly. And well, you also, we see people who, and for them, they're happy that way. But we see many people who reach a certain age and they're stuck. You know, they go through their mundane routines, they're happy with their life and they don't want change, and they don't evolve or grow any further than that. And I think everybody on this screen is probably ones that are not satisfied with that. And go back to that, there are times that we all know that we've kind of gotten that little nudge or that little poke in the rib, or we've literally
Get the
had
2x4
something
upside the
at
head.
the head. Yes. So, you know, but we still, it's how we still have the choice in how we react and how we embrace that or how we avoid it. So
So
good
this
question.
needs to
Yeah.
get our attention.
Yes. Yeah. But like I said, Pluto is extremely interesting. So yeah, life has thrown me several curveballs and I keep getting busier, and the time for everyone I know just keeps speeding up. It's incredible trying to schedule or work anything in, but at some point I will do some more classes, and there'll be, I do small groups and do them with Zoom kind of thing. So anyway, we'll someday in the future that'll arrive. I also want to talk about Neptune. So here we have Pluto, and then Neptune is those two are out there on the fringe of our solar system. And Neptune is really playing a big part in the US chart and in real time for us this upcoming year. I see this also as a good thing. Neptune is all things nebulous. It represents our consciousness, our connection to the divine. And it was first seen in the mid 1800s, and that was the same time we discovered gases. So Neptune represents all things nebulous, what we can't put into a box or have a hard time putting into words, our beliefs. Neptune asks us to have faith in the unseen. The trouble with Neptune is that it can be hard for us to know what we're looking at. It really asks us to fly blind and to drive in the fog. It distorts things. It's hard to see with Neptune. When I talk about Neptune, I think of the Harrison Ford movie, and it might have been one of the Raiders of the Lost Ark or whatever. They were being chased in these caverns, and they come up to this huge chasm, and they're being chased, and it's steep, and he takes some sand and he tosses it, and they can see that there's a bridge across, and they go across the bridge, and then they just get across, and the ones behind it come, and here's the steep, and they don't get chased to do further. But that's Neptune to me, that stepping off with the faith that the bridge is there, because we can't see. It's hard for us to define what we really believe in. It's hard for us to step off with faith. So on the USA chart, Neptune is square. It's natal Mars. And Neptune is also so that's 90 degrees. And it's also, Neptune is exactly 180 degrees in real time to its position on the USA's natal chart. So we have the opposition, we have the square. These are the two big ones for lessons. And they're the two aspects that are the toughest in our charts. And Neptune rules our nation's image, both at home and abroad. So this Mars-Neptune square, it's why this first quarter of the year for both US and for us in real time, it's a bit tough and a bit more intense. And not that we aren't going to have plenty of stuff on into the year, but my looking at it, there's such so much energy, and it's so condensed and so intense that we get into spring and towards the end of March, and things open up a bit more. They're a bit easier. This Neptune Mars square, it adds greatly to the suspicion of government, our press, and our corporations. And to me, it's just been mind-boggling how there's been this continued blurring of big government, big tech, and big corporation. We don't know where the lines are anymore. And back to, there's so many possibilities for which direction this country will go. And we talked about the news too, but I go, really, which one of these are censoring us? We really literally have lost our freedom of speech, our freedom of press, separation of church and state. Some churches accepted large amounts and sums because of COVID. And time and again, we've crossed a line without knowing or understanding what the consequences are. And our First Amendment with this nation was built on, with the freedom of speech, with the freedom of religion and separation of church and state. And we've lost these without a war, without a fight, without even realizing. And we don't even know who to blame, where to point a finger. But if American citizens decide to step up now, and this year really is our opportunity, because we are on the cusp of what we will choose and who we will be going forward. And the key really is, will the citizens of the US say, just send me another check? And we do that, we've gone down a rabbit hole with no way out. Or do we, as citizens and a nation, step up to be more spiritual and to unite our world? And we have all kinds of help here for America and for each human here on Earth. And the planets are sending that energy. What we do with it is up to us. And another big one with that Neptune opposition, and that too started here in December of 21, and it goes until the end of April. It is exact on February 28th. And this really affects USA's sense of spirituality, its connection to that divine energy. What are its ideals? What has become of those ideals from 1776? When I explain an opposition, because it's 180 degrees, it's like a teeter-totter. So we don't want to let one side bang. We need to find some semblance of balance between here. But this one's going to add to the feelings of confusion. And Neptune's orbit is 165 years. So human has this opposition around 84, 85 years of age. And the square again, right about that 42, that midlife. So when we're dealing with Neptune, it can be a confusing time. But it can also strengthen our faith. It can strengthen our faith in what we believe in our God and in the unknown, and those things that we have a hard time really defining and putting into words. And that's why I feel if each of us really defines what we believe in and who we truly are, that too has an impact. And we've been and this country has been disillusioned. And this is the time for those illusions to come tumbling down, to be exposed. And Neptune will force us to come back to the very fundamental concepts of our life and our existence and our beliefs. And for the United States, its image, the illusion of the US, its consciousness. So with both Neptune and Pluto, all the extremes, all the ups and downs, and all of this is going to be exaggerated during this process.
Okay, so are you saying around February 28th, kind of the United States really kind of has a spiritual crisis? Is that kind of what you're saying, that we really need to know who we are and, kind of get back to basics?
Well, and back to this, because we're in this, and we're in it now, and again going until spring, April 25th, And that 28th is when that energy is the most intense with that exact. But we're in the crunch of this whole time. Because it is and I like to give the exact dates and the orb, because it's kind of like it does build an intensity and then it wanes. It's the same as the moon cycle, because we wax in and then we wane. But we are within orb of this entire time for us to be dealing with this energy. And once again, with the, that peak of it is February 28th, and whether we'll actually see or feel the effects of that or around that, because those several days around there are going to be intense. Does that answer? And I know it's kind of
So we just need to sort of be aware around the end of February that things will be intense. Maybe not a good time to, I don't know, plan a trip or go.
No, I'll put it. This is what for me.
Yeah.
What I want. I want to just be sending good energy to those who are in power, and be asking for a most benevolent outcome for us as individuals, for our country, for the humans here on Earth. That's how I will do my part during that time.
Okay. You got our, so I see someone has their hand raised, but we're going to answer questions in a little bit. And if you'll put your question in the chat, I will, I'll ask Brenda, but I know you've got some more juicy stuff to share. So you're doing great. So keep going, Brenda.
Well, and this is my passion. I love your questions and interaction here. It's fun. A couple more things I want to talk about. One is Chiron is a huge asteroid. It's not in the asteroid belt. It's out between Saturn and Uranus. And it is sextile Uranus from September of 21 until May of 2022. And it's exact for its energy is right here, we're 19 on the 21st. So what is that, Friday? The thing is all aspects to Chiron are spiritual. So this aspect with the USA says this is time to create something new. We're departing from the normal run-of-the-mill consciousness, new ways of thinking, new ways of being. And Chiron is quintile Mars, and when it's the quintile is a lesser aspect, but it's inspiration. And so this may bring out some painful realizations for the US and how it asserts itself over other nations. And whenever I see Chiron and Mars, there's power, because Chiron and Mars were aspecting each other when the atom was split. Now we can use that power for good. We don't need to use it for bombs. But this is powerful energy, and it also has a lot of urge to create, to be creative. So we can direct it in this powerful energy into something new. And then the other really interesting thing about this next year for all of us and our country is there's what we call a fire void. So all of the outer planets are not in a fire sign. And the fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And this happens really quite frequently. But so Sun, Mercury, Venus, Moon will go through their cycles of going through those signs, but we'll have a whole lot of time this next upcoming year where we have all of the main astral bodies are not in a fire sign. So what this means is that, well, if it were a person because we'll have kids born with this during this year that with a fire void. And some of you may have, so there's fire, earth, air, and water signs. So some of you may have charts that have a void. But what this says for a child that was born, that they didn't need to have that was all, they came with that already accomplished, that already learned all of that in a previous life. Another way of saying it is there's no snags in that chart with that element, nothing to draw or distract. They come in with that knowledge, that mastery. Those born fire voids are natural born leaders. So the example is Ronald Reagan's chart was void of fire. And a fire void has a lot of self-sufficiency in that element, a natural talent, a lot of enthusiasm, faith that it just will work out in the end. In the same token, because there's no fire, there's a nice flow between the other elements, the earth, air, and water energy. There's a nice smooth flow. It's like they create a trine energy that just circulates nicely flow. So this inspires people into action, that underlying, that unwavering faith. It's much easier to overcome obstacles when there's a fire void. It's like having a lucky charm in the chart. And things just have a tendency to work out. Fire voids, they just seem to, they might face life challenges, but it's kind of like observing, they just flow. Things seem to just keep moving. And take this back then to the US chart this next year, I see this fire void as a very good thing. Fire signs are very good at, they have a lot of their vitality, they have a lot of resilience, they're full of life, they live life at every moment to its fullest. So they have the exuberance, but all fire signs are also volatile. They're quick to react, quick to get defensive or go to war. Because when we feel our life force is threatened, that's when we'll go to war. And for each of you, know that when you get into judgment or when you start to get defensive, you've just gone to war. So I see the fire void as a lucky charm for the USA this coming year, because fire voids just land on their feet. They find it easy to overcome obstacles. What's less common is we don't have a whole lot of retrograde this next year. These past 2 years, and actually 3, we called it retrograde storm. We had all of the planets, just these constant, and where we had so many of them at once. So that means there are less do-overs. We're not doing those repeats. It's more creating new. Again, why I say it's so important for each of us to set our own intentions, be definitive about our own goals and what we're wanting. And the USA really has the opportunity to make changes. We're not redoing all the old. And the USA has Uranus and Saturn, Uranus sextile to the sun. And this is saying there's a wake-up call for the USA. It's about its life. It's about its vitality. And that one's here, so it will develop and mature, grow up. And that one says there will be some dramatic turns that ultimately will be for the better, because it really is a new level of maturity awaits after this transit.
So we're not out of the bumps in the road. If it's a dramatic turn, that'll get our attention. I was thinking, oh, it's a creative renaissance. But sounds like not quite yet.
Not quite yet. But I do think I think it's going to be very interesting to observe it. And that's too where I think with having some awareness of what these energies are, we're going to be able to look at what happens with that greater awareness to say, hey, this is a turn for the good. We're exposing something. We're getting it out in the open, and we're making some changes. So about wrapping up here, the last one I want to talk about, I think, is I got a couple more, but one I get really excited is this Pluto and Neptune sextile that's out on the edge of our solar system. So normally Pluto and Neptune are only an aspect of each other for about 15 years. This is so incredible. We've got it for 82 years that they are in a sextile. That's 60 degrees. So if you look at the chart, you drew the Star of David. That's what those 60 degrees would come to. Because of their elliptical orbit and the retrogrades, not 15 years, but 82 years, from 1950 until 2032, these two planets are in this sextile. And with all the other, I want to say, with all the other aspects in astrology, there's a yin and yang. It's the planets are just sending energy in. But with the sextile, there's no negative to that energy. It's only positive. And we have these two out doing their dance out on the edge of the solar system. And when you think about it, not only the majority of the people alive on Earth have this in their birth chart, but everyone since 1950 has had it in their solar return chart, doing and dealing with this vibration of these two planets. And what this says is it's giving everyone on Earth a very pioneering spirit, unafraid to challenge the accepted ways of thinking and doing. And I think back to how far we've come since 1950, you know, the changes we've seen. And I get very excited every time I get to talk about this one. I always get tears in my eyes because what this does for humanity and the timing of it to be here now, because there's this aspect, we can completely take down the established structures, old traditions, and recreate them in a more humane and more spiritual form, more benevolent outcome for all humans. And it's why during this time, we have seen the imbalance of in whether it's religious and culture or gender and race, all these differences, we have to see them so they can be transformed. And this is all here to allow the full potential of the human, for the human to evolve during this time frame. This is here literally for the human to make its evolutionary leap. Think of the extreme changes we've seen since 1950. So many things brought into awareness that were earlier were hidden or swept under the rug, is just the way things were. But these two planets, Pluto and Neptune sextile, their biration, we can connect to the morphogenic field much more easily. We both connect to it, and each and every individual has a greater influence on the whole, on the one. And that is why it is so important for what each individual does in their own lives, because each little increment and raise in vibration affects the whole. It's felt by all of humanity. And we have this shared responsibility of what happens to our world. Our systems, beliefs, old traditions can all be recreated with a more humanitarian approach. So with that, I contemplate for your own life. Where can you go for an upgrade? What traditions? What has outlived? Where can you change in your life? And then I say too, honor all the ways that you've learned and grown and have raised your vibration, because each little increment is truly huge in the big picture. And you have power. What you think you create, and what you give and put in there comes back.
Absolutely. And I think as Dowsers, we recognize that we have power. Or at least that's what I hope that we we believe and know about ourselves. And for anyone that doesn't really know about morphogenic field, that's that's really the field of all possibilities. That's where things are created. And, you know, we are the creators.
We are.
We are the creators.
Yeah.
So that's the big positive. So was it Pluto and what is sextiled?
Pluto and Neptune. Those
Pluto
two
and Neptune. Okay.
And it's a 60 degrees. So think of that Star of David, that vibration. Yeah.
And so that's till 2032. So yeah, we are way more powerful than we have any idea, I think is.
And the reason for it being here now, it's just,
It's no accident.
the odds of it is just, there's no mistake.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think we all chose to be here on some level to create change. Absolutely. Wow. That's a lot of juicy stuff to take in. You ready for some questions?
I just a little wrap up here for
Yes, please.
for 2022, some of my thoughts for all of you moving forward. And then, yes, just a couple of more comments. Because I do challenge each of you to figure out in what ways you can declutter your life. And I mean, not only just in physical, but the big ones are what we, those thought forms and those things that we keep in our brain. So that, and these are the things I've been asking myself. So what are you taking forward into this year? You don't want to be weighed down with anything that might hold you back. And 2022, it really is time for all humans to soar, to be like that Icarus and fly as close as we can to the sun, to really soar. You want a clean slate for year zero, the hero. And know and remember, we are right now on a very important cusp to decide where you are going and who you want to be. It really is time to be authentic. It's time to be true to our souls and to value and honor who you are, unique human you came here to be. You are more powerful than you know, as we just talked. So again, what are you going to create? What do you want your world to look like? And it's time for the human to realize that they are God-realized species. And it's time for the human to realize they are connected to the divine. There we go.
Yeah. Whoosh. Yeah. Thank you. Very powerful. Okay. I think we've got some questions. I have a little list here. You know, what about weather? We've been having kind of some extreme weather over the last few years. Just the chart for the US, you know, show, I guess world too, but really more US, since most of us are here. What do we have to look forward to weather-wise?
It's Pluto again. It's Pluto again. The interesting thing is when Pluto was first seen was the time during the time of the Great Depression. There were weather anomalies around the world. And we, not only our stock market, our financial system, it was all, we had the crash, it was reformed, restructured. So when we know about the Great Depression as far as the US, but once again, that weather was around the world. So I would expect, and I feel the Earth is doing its thing. I would expect some weather anomalies. I would not be a bit surprised. I feel that's part of the evolution, part of the change.
Since you mentioned the Great Depression, you know, my next question was kind of what about our economy?
I think it'll be really interesting to observe. And as you know, I'm a power of positive thinking. There's going to have to be some transformation and change. I see our dollar needs to correct. And I actually, on our stock market, actually needs to correct. I would like to just see it do its correction and continue. What I often feel happens is it's messed up. They try to manipulate it, and then we just create a bigger problem. So,
Well, right. A lot of times I think they try to start wars to correct our economic system, but I think we're over that. Nobody wants that. Yeah, I think people are going to be very over that. I don't think that is going to fly this time. Yeah, so it needs to correct any things you might want to bring our attention to, things to be aware.
I would say try to rather than getting caught up in the drama of things, which our news is, once everybody all fired up and inflamed, try to step back and observe it and stay out of the drama. And because I think with greater awareness, we'll see that a lot of these changes and a lot of the exposure is for the greater good. It's part of the process. Yeah.
So I guess we're already collectively in the process, or are we the process? Do we, maybe by being our unique, authentic selves, we create that change, or since we've got that pioneering spirit, those of us who are, maybe have that really clear divine inspiration on, wow, well, what kind of a system do we need to create here that will benefit all? You think some of those folks will be coming forward in that information?
Well, and I do. I think that through this process, if we decide, and they're back to with each individual putting their vibration into the morphogenic field of a most benevolent outcome for the human, of let's step up and do this right. Let's quit the going to war and the bickering and the worrying about the trivia. And I said this recently, I have the divide and conquer. So we need to be able to hear different opinions and honor each individual. And there are things where there's a firm line of this is not doable, this is not acceptable to do to another human. But I'm getting to it recently. I said, used to be don't talk religion and don't talk politics. Well, now it's even big, and I'm in Montana, you didn't bring up wolves. Now it's even bigger to talk about the vaccine. It's so volatile. It is split up families, it's split up communities, it's neighbors at what. Who would have thought that what we decide to do our own body could be more volatile than religion and politics?
So divisive, yeah.
And I'm going to get on my soapbox a bit, but I'm going to say divide and conquer. I think that it has become such volatile is our media to blame. And I say we need to step up as humans and not buy into this and not get into that drama and rise above it. Step back and observe, rise above it. Be careful of our own energies.
Well, Pluto is transforming us and this situation, whether we like it or not. So
yeah,
we can have the tap on the shoulder or the 2x4 upside the head.
And I've seen that 2x4, and I
don't like that.
Try to tuck that one. Yeah.
No, thank you. If you have a question, please put it in the chat, and I'll be happy to ask Brenda. Another question: what What do you see unfolding on the world stage?
Well, back to even for the world, this first quarter is more intense, and we've had such, because once again the world has also dealt with Saturn and Pluto in 2020, and Saturn and Uranus square in 21, and we've got a lot of the Neptune energy predominantly here for the world in the first quarter of the year. So I'm hoping too that maybe worldwide we can have a little bit more wake up and realize a connection to the divine in whatever, for each human around the world. We already talked about weather anomalies. I think we're going to see worldwide. What else did you ask, Mary? I got it kind of going on my
Just kind of world stage, but I guess I'd be curious. I think a lot of people are really curious. What about travel? I feel like that's going to really open up this year. I think people are very tired of not being able to travel.
And well, I'll say one thing is in your own chart and transit, you can watch Jupiter. Jupiter is long distance travel. Mercury represents short distance travel, and Jupiter long distance. So there too on the my weekly constellation considerations, you can look at that for. And I haven't looked, for your own individual. I honestly haven't looked at that, or as far as I glanced through ahead at the year. I kind of just got a pulse on thing, but not details. So,
but Jupiter's playing a big role in things this year, right?
Neptune is, and honestly, I'm not sure on to answer that if it's any bigger than normal, but Jupiter, and you can always remember Jupiter's the biggest planet, and so it does represent expansion and growth. And the only trouble
definitely in that phase.
And the only trouble we have with Jupiter is too much. So we can be too exuberant. We can eat too much chocolate. That we just kind of got to tone down once in a while when we deal with Jupiter.
Well, thank you. That's great. Do we have any questions? Anybody have a question for Brenda? Let's see. JoAnne says, transformation in AI to transhumanism for humanity. How to interpret these technologies for humanity versus dehuman civilization. I think you were kind of alluding to that earlier.
Yes, I was. So I think we really need to be aware of improper use of technology. We've got some great things in our lives this meeting, thanks to technology. It's here to stay, and what it's done for medicine and so many things. And here I'm if I want to delve and open up into this. We also know, whether it's Facebook or any of that it's being misused and manipulated. And that we really need to keep the human in it. That if we cross, once again, we can so easily cross a line of we could flip a switch and be robotic and literally lose our humanity. So I'm thinking of all kinds of examples, but I even had a gal show me where she'd invested in a company. She was thrilled. She gave, I think, $2,000. So this company took her cash of $2,000, and she was getting paid when her robot made a delivery. So she's a wife, not working. So they used this $2,000. She's got no interest on it, but she would get on her phone and see, oh, it made a delivery. I got $25 today of a robot, not a person, making a delivery. That was one of those things that to me is like, this is going down the wrong path. And if we don't step up and have greater awareness of when we've crossed that line, it's pretty hard to get back over it.
Right. Right. Let's see, there is a question. Is the solar return chart the same as a progressed chart?
No, not at all. Progressed chart is kind of like a time lapse. And solar return is simply the degree in the minute of when you were born, or like the US. And then when that sun comes to the degree and minute that year. So they are two entirely different things and calculated.
Okay. There's a question from Sandy. Can there also be an air or water void? For example, she says she has no water in her chart and only one earth.
You bet. And let me, I did jot down, and I got it on an outline here somewhere. Because I was wondering if somebody somewhere along might ask about that. Bear with me too far.
That was very interesting to hear about the void. I didn't,
Well,
I've never heard that.
it is, and I blew right past it. Okay. And back to her question. Here's is no water. Okay.
Yeah, no water in the chart.
Okay. And the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And when you think of water, water takes on the shape of whatever container it's in. It's a reflection of its surrounding. So a water void, you, my dear, really are a power to be reckoned with, because an example that I have that I wanted to come back to, Stephen Hawking had a water void in his chart. Water voids give forth an abundance of information, often very focused. They can also hold space because of that. Because of that void, they can hold space for healing, for a great deal of healing. And big thing with a water void, yeah, a lot of power.
So
And
those of you that know Sandy know that's true about her.
so I'll go ahead, since only one Earth, she's almost that, and then I'll read air too. So the Earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, and the Earth signs are all about Earth, about all the tangible, about the very material world. And so with Earth voids, they didn't need that. The Earth is literally always at their feet. They can manifest and create easily, and a water void, they don't worry about the next paycheck. They're just beyond even worrying about that. It's there. And then air voids, so that's Gemini.
You mean the Earth void doesn't worry about a
The
paycheck?
Earth void. Did I say what?
You said water.
Water. Oops. Okay. Yeah. Earth void. Thank you for listening to me. So air void, so that's Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. My Mercury, I have a short circuit between here and my mouth and my brain. But okay, back to air voids is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. So air air transmits, it spreads things. So when we think of air, just think of the wind. It spreads information and all things that bind us together as humans. And air signs, so air voids, they really keep their cool in a crisis. And air voids, they have a lot of vision for humanity's full potential, for where things can go, because they can really spread it.
Okay, so the air void. So the water void was powerful, healer, holds space.
Mhm.
And what was the fire void?
Well, the fire void are natural born leaders, and they very sufficient, very there's no snags. They have a
And
things
ease.
things just tend to work out and flow. They may do the work, but it's kind of like a natural lucky streak. And they don't have the volatility. They don't go to war. That things just are keep moving and flowing.
Wow. Okay, that's all pretty fascinating. There's so many more questions in my head. We're kind of getting close to our time to be done. Let's see, Teresa put in here, she said it's more of a statement than a question, that it's very important to step up in love and compassion and tolerance, time to do things differently and reimagine, to rethink and imagine the world and life as the mega utmost best, and to spend as much time in that frequency as possible. And that we don't need to know how it's going to happen, that we need to let creation figure that out.
Yes.
I think that's a great
Yes.
thing. And then Kathleen says, I believe that our big shift to the evolved human is to change from thinking of our bodies as flawed and in need of repair to the idea that our bodies are the most advanced biological technology that exists. Amen to that.
Mhm.
We can heal ourselves and move between dimensions. In addition to the key to our transformation is within each of us. Could the Pluto energy of transformation support this evolution?
By all means, yes. Yes. Pluto is how we evolve.
Yeah.
Bottom line, it is
Yeah.
through our Pluto. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
has been really wonderful. And for those of you that would like to have a session with Brenda, or get on her email list, Brenda, you want to say your email for those?
Yeah. It is all lowercase, the word futures, FUTURES, my initials BW. So futuresbw@gmail.
Okay, yeah. So please reach out to Brenda and get on her list. She's got some good info for you. A couple of announcements. Next month, February, we are going to be meeting in person, and we're going to have Catherine Ashby talk about feng shui for the Chinese New Year. So stay tuned. That'll be interesting. I think it's Year of the Tiger. So it should be great, and it'll be nice to be in person. So we'll send out some information on that. And the first Saturday in February, the Tucson Dowsers meet at 1:30 Pacific time. And if you want to get on the Tucson Dowsers email list, that's Tucson Dowsers, it's plural, .net. And they will add you to their list. So thank you all. And thank you, Brenda. This has been fantastic. And here's to a transformative with grace and ease 2022. And we'll send out the recording. Thank you.
Thank you for asking me. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.